So can you allow me to share the screen whenever I press or it's not
Yeah,
allowed?
I'm going to do, okay, you're allowed to do that.
Okay, awesome. Let's see. Okay. Can you see my slide number 1?
Yes.
Okay, so first of all, I and Dr. Lin will like to thank everyone to give us this opportunity for presenting this trial. And we are seeking your help to accrue to this trial. And this trial is very, very important to us and to the whole field of ALK positive lung cancer patients as well as the space. So I will go over it very briefly, and then we will both take the questions and answers. As we mentioned, that Dr. Lin is the PI from Mass General, and I am the PI from the NCI CETA program for this trial. So this trial is actually a collaboration. It was really put together by the NCI, and then NRG was where the trial is going in collaboration. Now we are working with the NRG and Dr. Lin, and so what we also have done is we have fellow champion PIs from all the groups that are adult groups. So for example, we have Dr. So from NRG. We have Dr. Christine Lee from ECOG Akron. We also have Dr. Gazil, who has just joined us. We had Dr. Dobo, who has since moved to pharma, but we now have Dr. Gazil. She's going to be joining us from SWOG. We also have a pathology co-chair, Dr. Sika. We have two uh, mm, uh, statisticians who worked with us too, because as we go, it looks complex, but it's really not a complex trial. So I'll talk a little bit about that. We had two statisticians, one from NCI and one from NRG, who worked to put this together. Can you hear it? So what we know is, you all know this. I don't have to. I'm kind of speaking to the choir. So we know that the ALK rearrangements are about 5% in non-small cell lung cancer, and there are about 5 drugs. There are actually 5 drugs that are approved by the sorry, by the FDA for this patient population. So crizotinib was the first drug that was approved many years ago in 2014. Actually, I was one of the reviewers. I worked for the FDA at that time, and we approved that drug under my review. So anyway, so after that, the second generation drugs came, and they have shown superiority over that. So they have now become as a first line, like seratinib, alectinib, and brigatinib. So what we need is that what happens to the patients, what happens once they become resistant to these medicines. So we don't have any trials that could have helped us with this, and this is what this trial is looking for. What happens to the patients who get resistance after the first line of ALK inhibitor? Should they be on lorlatinib? As you know, it's a kind of a third generation ALK inhibitor, as you call it. And should they be going another ALK inhibitor?
Are you okay with this?
Toward for the later part, whether should they be going to another one which they haven't had before, or should they go on chemotherapy? So this is the trial that is looking into all of this. Let's see if I can move my slide. Okay. So this trial is based on the preliminary data that showed that these ALK resistant mutations will serve as a critical biomarker to guide the therapy. Again, these were small case studies, or there were a few cases that were noted. So this is what the trial is looking at. Is it true that these patients will be responding to the different drugs based on their mutation? And what we also know is that not everybody develops these resistant mutations that we can at the current time measure, but they could have, they are not noted in those. What can we do for these patients who do not develop these mutations, the resistant mutations? So this is the trial that is proposed, that what happens after this. And then, so we have a algorithm based on this, to the to put the patients, which is based on the tissue biopsies. So patients are to have metastatic ALK positive positive lung cancer. They have to have one prior second generation ALK, that for which they have progressed. They could have had crizotinib, but then they could also have, in those cases, they could have crizotinib and a second generation, but they have to have second generation. Prior lorlatinib is not allowed. They have to have a measurable disease, good performance status. Now, stable brain met patients are allowed. And then we are also, one of the other uh, goals of this trial is the cell-free DNA, or what we call is liquid biopsies in these patients. So what we are doing is that initially we are going to be doing tissue as well as the liquid biopsies. And then with the FDA is also aware of this. So we are going to be reviewing those results after 200 patients. If we find a good concordance, which we are comfortable with and FDA is comfortable with, at that point, we will switch to liquid biopsies only. And based on this mutations, these are the various drugs that the patients will receive. Again, in the first 200, we are going to be using the tissue biopsies. Now, if the patients do not have ALK mutation, as I mentioned, then they will be randomized to receive either another ALK inhibitor that they haven't received yet, which is what normally is being done in community, or they could be randomized to chemotherapy, which is a cisplatin or carboplatin with pemetrexed. And if the patients have MET amplifications or they have ALK L1198F, they will be receiving crizotinib. So this is really the trial. So this is, when you look at it, it looks complex. It's really not a complex trial. It's like a trial of a, like, as you call, is a master protocol, which kind of makes, which has small buckets. And we're trying to see, it has multiple, these are the multiple small cohorts of this trial, and then we're trying to see whether these really works in these mutations, or whether these patients who don't have mutations should get chemotherapy or another ALK inhibitor. So this is, you have to see this as not a complex trial, but a small bucket of many trials in one trial. What are we looking for is the primary is the ALK mutations, whether it then we will look at the response rate. We will also be looking at the PFS and other CNS response rate, safety, and tolerability. We do have kind of accrual that is very ambitious, which is 660 patients. The trial got activated April 2019, so we're already about a year and a half, more than a year and a half out now. And we have very poor accrual. Now, this is why, not why, but we always wanted to reach out to you, but this is kind of a dire importance for us to reach to everyone at the moment. And we have been talking, and Jessica and I have been connecting through the various advocacy groups. We have also called people who have opened the trial and asking them what the barriers are. We are really, we have been given multiple answers to this issue. And what, on top of everything else, COVID-19, like, really did not help the accrual to this trial, because of the complexity of the trial, and that it takes sites some time to open it. So by the time the sites really started opening it, it was just in the middle of the COVID. And so that didn't help it either. We know that this is a rare population. And there are drugs that are available off of the clinical trial. What we, this trial is very, very important because no one else outside of the NCI with collaboration, NCI has put quite a few $1 million to do this trial because this trial is very important as pharma is not interested. It's mostly scientifically driven, a lab kind of a trial, that it's not about a drug who being approved or not, because these drugs are already approved. This is for the patient care. So really the pharma is never going to be interested in this kind of a trial. And that's why we are hoping we'll do our best. I and Jessica have been, as I mentioned, trying to get support for this trial. And if we have to close this trial, unfortunately, if we don't accrue, and at that time, it's unfortunate that we'll not be able to know these answers, as no one else in the industry is going to be interested in this trial. So that's why we are seeking your support and see how what we can do to help to accrue this trial. So this is my contact. And Jessica, I am sorry, I didn't realize you were going to, because I didn't see your positive response. But if you can also mention your contact information, we can and people can respond as well, contact you. So here is where I will stop, and I am open, and we will open the question and answer session now, unless somebody else would like to
Would
speak.
you like Dr. Lynn to speak at
Yeah.
all before question
Jessica,
and answers,
yes,
or?
yes. Jessica, would you like to say a few words about the trial?
Sure.
We
Yes.
open that.
Hi, everyone. It's so nice to see all of you. I was part of the ALK Positive Summit a few months ago, and because of the huge audience at that time, I think the requirement was that all the videos had to be turned off. And I see with tonight's session, some of you have the videos turned on, and I'm able to see you kind of face to face virtually, and it's so nice to see everyone in their comfortable homes. I, I want to emphasize that the reason we came here today is to make sure that you are all aware of this trial, the reason that it was designed, and why we think it's important. We're not here to tell you that you yourself or one of your friends should be enrolling on this trial, or that this trial should take precedence over other trials by any means, right? What's important is that you are aware of the trial and what it's meant to achieve and what patients it's designed for, so that if you are somebody who should be eligible for this trial, you know that this is an option and you know to discuss it with your treating physician. I'm happy to take any questions with Dr. Malik at this point.
Okay, to make things where we're kind of some organization of some sort, I think we have a device here, raising your hand, if everyone can see that, and I believe it's under reactions. No, where would it be? More. Why don't we do this? Unmute yourself and just ask one question at a time. So first, Gina, do you have a better idea of how to do this?
Well, I think maybe if we put the questions in the chat, and then Mark, if you'd like to call them out, like Stephanie had the very first question there in the chat, and then I think Erica had a question next, and then Smitty's Fish and iPad had one next. Maybe we could go like that.
I see there are people, I see the questions on the chat box already. So if it's okay, I can start taking them. So first question is untreated brain mets. So what do I mean by untreated brain mets? So as you know that most of these drugs do go across the blood-brain barrier. So what I mean by that is that a patient has been known to have brain mets and they don't have any symptoms at all, the treating physician feels that it will be okay to start them on the drug. There is not an emergency. They are not on any steroids, and the brain met is not causing any problem. And those are the untreated brain mets. And the patients with those kind of small brain mets are eligible Also, if there are some patients who have been treated with the radiation, they are also eligible. So both sets are eligible, but obviously if patient has brain mets that need immediate attention, for that, they will need radiation.
Right, so this is really meant to leave the decision of treating known brain metastasis with either focal or nowadays very rarely whole brain radiation to the discussion between the patient and their physician. It's not more restrictive in terms of trial eligibility. It makes it more liberal and allows you to enroll without necessarily having to go through radiation if that's not in the best interest of the patient, depending on your situation. So that's why the eligibility criteria is developed this way. A lot of far too many trials, even to this day, despite the availability of brain penetrant drugs, still require that all known brain metastases are treated with radiation. And increasingly, we are trying to move away from that, especially if we think that the drug that's being offered in the trial has potential to be active against brain metastasis.
We have another question, Jessica. It asks that, do we have the trial in Canada? I don't know which sites it is. It was supposed to be in Canada, but I'm not sure that we opened it in Canada, but I can check on that. Jessica, do you recall? I don't think it opened in Canada.
No, I don't.
Yeah.
We have the trials open at numerous sites across the United States, but I'm not sure about the Canada piece.
I do see that Lisa is on the trial. So Lisa, can you tell us what drug you're on, how, or not, you don't have to tell us what drug, but at least what your experience is being on this trial? I see Lisa. I don't know if Lisa is still on. That will be very helpful to all of us to know what you think.
Sorry, I'm here. I wrote in the comments. I have a paralyzed vocal cord, so I can't talk.
No problem, no problem. How is your experience been? Okay, I know you have a question why we did not give you biopsy results and what mutations are found. This is to keep the integrity of the trial intact, but if and when you need, yes, definitely we will give it to you. They are yours, yes.
Okay.
Anything, Jessica, do you have any other questions?
Let's see. Why would you have a crizotinib arm without any other drug combo, knowing it does not cross the blood-brain barrier? That's a really good question. I think that's something we're going to have to discuss internally among the investigators. It is a question that has come up a number of times at this point. At the time that this trial was designed for MET amplification harboring lung cancer, there were no FDA-approved drugs available. As some of you know, over the past year, capmatinib became FDA approved for patients that have MET altered tumors. And capmatinib is known to have some efficacy in the central nervous system. And so we will discuss about this amongst us, the trial leaders.
Yeah, and that has come up an earlier meeting also. So we are going to be discussing and trying to see if we can change it.
And then the next question is, I'm from Asia, possible to participate? There, I'm not sure if the question is that you are geographically located and you live in Asia, or whether it's that you're of Asian race. I assume it's the former. If it's the latter, there's no restriction based on the fact that you're from Asia, but if you're residing in Asia, I do not believe we have any sites open in Asia for this study.
No, yeah.
And there's a question from Corinne. If one is progressing only in the brain and or in the bone, are they still a good candidate? That's a very good question. If you're progressing only in the brain or in the bone, sometimes bone can be biopsied, but as this question is referring to, bone biopsies can be very challenging because of the special way that they have to be processed for the sequencing piece to be successful. And so bone biopsies tend to be lower yield, and we tend to choose other sites for biopsy if at all possible. The other issue is that to enroll in the trial, the patient must have what's called measurable disease, where it's an objective kind of tumor of certain size that can be followed throughout the time that you're on the trial to assess in as quantitative and objective a manner as possible how the tumor is responding to therapy. Cancer that's in the bone is not considered measurable because often disease in the bones can be very hard to follow when you're on active therapy. And so that's another issue that has to be considered depending on the sites of active disease.
So the next question is how many sites are open? We have about 400 plus sites that are open currently, and there are a few more sites that are trying to open at the moment. So other one, you want to take the next one, Jessica? About CLL.
Yeah, that's a good question. I have to remind myself how we wrote the eligibility criteria with respect to that.
I think we wrote that as long as they don't have any active tumor, but we will have to see how long you have not had it, and as long as you are negative, I think yeah, and you are also on alectinib, so hopefully you will be good for another couple of years and then be eligible for the trial. She's on alectinib right now, Jessica.
If no ALK mutation is found, does the NGS also look for other possible drivers? And if another driver is found, how will that be handled as part of the trial? So this is a full next generation sequencing panel that's pretty comprehensive. So it will assess for other kind of canonical drivers that are known to cause resistance or cause cancer in general, including MET, HER2, BRAF, and so forth. If another driver is found, it depends on what other driver is found. So if MET is found, there is an arm specifically for patients found to have MET amplification. The other drivers kind of fall into the no ALK mutation and no MET amplification category. So those patients would be randomized to either chemotherapy or an alternative ALK inhibitor. If there is another driver that's found that could potentially theoretically be treated with a novel kind of combination regimen, then that combination regimen would not be offered as part of this ALK Master trial. Part of the reason is that those other potentially actionable drivers are very rare. So we know that MET amplification in itself is a recurring resistance alteration that we see in patients with ALK positive lung cancer after second generation inhibitors. The other drivers are very rare, and it's such a small subset that it wouldn't really, we're already talking about how complex the design is, and to account for every single possible rare resistance driver that's targetable would have made this trial kind of not viable. So.
Thanks, that makes sense.
Any other questions? I don't see any other questions at the moment.
I have a question.
Yes.
Another one, I guess. Is this something you'd have to be on lorlatinib first? And no. Okay, my other question is, what is in ensartinib? I'm sorry, just a little bit of feedback on what that drug is. I know we've kind of talked about it throughout our ALK Facebook postings, but maybe you guys could dive into what that is a little bit more.
Go ahead, Jessica.
So with regard to lorlatinib, the trial actually specifically prohibits prior lorlatinib. And the reason there is that the resistance landscape after lorlatinib is pretty distinct from what we might see with second generation inhibitors like alectinib. And so it didn't really make sense to include everyone after alectinib, brigatinib, and lorlatinib and so forth. So lorlatinib is not permitted. With regard to ensartinib is another one of those second generation ALK inhibitors is how I would classify it, kind of in the class of alectinib and brigatinib. It does have CNS efficacy. It does have activity against a spectrum of ALK resistance mutations. And recently, as you know, there's increasing interest in looking at these next generation ALK inhibitors in the upfront setting in patients that are newly diagnosed. And ensartinib was also assessed in that kind of first line setting compared to crizotinib, and that data was just made available this past year. It's not yet an FDA approved drug. So alectinib is, brigatinib is, lorlatinib is, and ensartinib remains an investigational drug at this time. In fact, it's actually, I believe, the only TKI that we're offering through this trial that's not yet FDA approved. But you can think of it as kind of in that second generation ALK inhibitor category. Although as inferred from the design of this trial, each second generation ALK inhibitor has a distinct spectrum of activity against the different ALK mutations. And so that's another reason that this inhibitor is included in the trial design.
So the next question is, how does the trial work with insurance? Actually, one of the reasons why NCI has put, as I mentioned, a lot of resources into this is that all the treatment, the drugs are free of charge to the patient, as well as the biopsy is free of charge. So all of that is paid by the NCI.
Kathy, some of your notes are coming online.
So the next question is, why are doctors not recommending this trial upon progression? So we did talk to the doctors, Jessica and I did, and we have other PIs who also talked. It's not that they are not, I mean, as you know, that this is a rare population, and we and some of the doctors are saying that they haven't seen a patient. Some others are saying that because of the COVID-19 and all that, that they have not been able to get everything together. And some are saying that, you know, that they haven't, they have some patients who are still on the drugs and have not progressed. So there is various reasons why it was not, I'm not able to kind of isolate one reason that I could say why they are not, that the accrual is so bad. I don't know, Jessica has also been talking to the PIs. Do you have anything else that you were able to comprehend from all these discussions?
Yeah, just a couple other thoughts. One is I've heard from the physicians that we've had a chance to directly touch base with that sometimes there is hesitation from the patient's part about the idea of being required to undergo biopsies in order to be able to be assigned a treatment on the trial, which I certainly understand. Every biopsy is an invasive procedure, and with every invasive procedure, there are potential risks. Although in our opinion, the kind of the potential benefit from being able to rationally match your subsequent therapy based on the biopsy results, the potential benefits in our mind outweigh those potential risks, but it is very much a personal kind of a value decision. Another thought is, you know, this trial is by no means like the typical trial that we discuss with our patients and present, right? A typical trial you may think of as kind of a early phase 1 trial where you're dealing with one drug and looking at its safety and toxicity profile, or typical phase 3 trial where we know, you know, you're going to get either control drug versus a specific investigational drug, and there's one drug that you're looking at, right? Whereas this trial is very much multiple different treatment arms, with the treatment decided based on the biopsy results with tissue and plasma biopsy. So it's very much trial that was designed with a specific aim and taking into account all of the wealth of molecular data that's available regarding the different treatments available for ALK inhibitors. And so I think it is an unusual design trial, and that also probably plays a part in the accrual challenges.
Yeah, although patients don't have to. I think like it looks complex. It's really not complex, and patients don't have to remember all the side effects before they get assigned to a particular drug. So it's just a matter of thought process. Say once I get assigned, randomized to trial, then you can look at that particular arm. But yeah, it's just a thought that it looks, oh my god, this. I keep on reassuring people, it's just that the process, as you would do in any other trial, it's like you have to think about it. This is a master protocol and it has these small subsets, and you are going to be only dealing with one subset. So it sounds and looks more complicated than it really is. And also eh, there was one question earlier before we go to what can we give you the sites that have this trial? Yes, I think it should be available to you, but I will get a list from NCI and send it to you as well. The what sites the trial is open. Uh, hey, Jessica, there is another question. How long before protocol could be known for the treating progression from the second TKI?
I'm not sure, honestly, because the accrual has been so slow. It all depends on how the accrual is over the next few months, because as Dr. Malik mentioned, if it doesn't pick up, then we may be faced with the decision of having to close the trial, unfortunately. I do think that the information that can be gained from this trial is very valuable, but it all depends on how the logistics of the trial accrual proceeds in the coming months.
Yeah.
Dr. Lynn, I have a question for you. So if I'm your patient, right? And I come through, how would you advise me through this? Because it seems like a complex trial to us, but as a doctor, how do you explain it? And how do we go to our oncologist and even find out about the master protocol?
I would say, this is a trial developed to look at how biopsies can inform and optimize subsequent treatment selection. That's really the big picture of this trial. And so from a logistical perspective, the first step is, of course, making sure that you're eligible for the trial, and then getting the biopsy done, both the blood sampling and the tissue. And then there's a little bit of a wait period for that information to come back and for the treatment to be assigned. And then once there is a known treatment, then making sure you understand how to take the drug and the potential side effects. And then in terms of the follow-up for the trial, it would be pretty similar to the follow-up that you would need just kind of even outside the trial setting to monitor, to make sure you're feeling okay and that your blood work looks good and so forth.
Yeah. It is again, as Jessica mentioned, it's just that it has so many arms that people get intimidated by this whole kind of a large trial. But it's really, once you as you go in any other clinical trial, there will be a biopsy, there will be a first will be eligibility, whether you're eligible or not, and then there will be a biopsy, and then there will be some blood taken, which is the cell-free DNA for future use, and then you will be told what arm you will be randomized to. And then you will be given your as in any other trial which even has one arm, or a randomized arm. You'll be told which arm you go to, and then you will be getting the toxicity profile and consented for that arm only. So again, it looks, feels like a very complex. It's really not. It's just a multiple arms in the same trial.
Dr. Lynn and Dr. Malik, I have a couple people asking me, like, how do I get started? So what should they do next to get started on this trial?
I would suggest that I think it's very important, as was brought up already, where the trial is open, to find out which is the closest place where this trial is open, talk to their physician, and absolutely, and if they have any questions, I and Jessica are more than happy to help. And we will get you the list of the places that it is open.
Great. And there are a lot of questions about Canada and Asia.
Unfortunately, I don't think it's open in Canada I mean, I know it's not in Asia, but we tried to open it in Canada, but I am not sure we were able to. So I will check on that again.
Dr. Malik,
Yes.
how
Sir.
often do you do follow-up scans? Every 8 weeks, or are they going to be 12 weeks?
It's 12 weeks.
Okay.
If I remember correctly, Jessica. Yeah.
I believe it's every 12 weeks.
Yeah. It will be like same as you would do if you were on any other drug.
I was just thinking because it's a study that you might do them every 8 weeks. That's all.
Yeah. Yes. Sir.
So just to repeat, if you've taken or you are on lorlatinib and progress, you're not eligible for any trial. Part of it because it doesn't have any other arm.
Not
Correct.
well,
Okay.
you're not. So if you've had lorlatinib, you're not eligible for this particular trial.
Gotcha.
But there may be other trials that are potential options for you.
Not in the master protocol trial though, in a different type
Not
of
within this trial. That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
I have a quick question. I was actually enrolled in the master protocol, and once they did the biopsies, they found that the lymph nodes that they thought for sure was progression in my chest were not malignant. And I also had the blood biopsy. So if I progress again and it's and they think that it's progression again, will the trial cover another biopsy and another blood biopsy too?
Yes. It will.
Yes. Yes.
It is
Unmute.
good to know why you were ineligible. We always wonder why was someone not ineligible. So thank you for letting us know.
Okay, don't be bashful because the two doctors will be leaving shortly. So if you do have a question, unmute yourself and ask, and don't be bashful.
I have a question. I'm wondering if you're ALK positive, is there a chance that that biomarker can change? Is that why you do further biopsies?
Correct. Yes, ma'am. That is the reason that they develop these new resistant mutations, why we want to do a new biopsy. And that is based on that we wanted the treatment.
And what determines if you could do a regular biopsy versus the blood one?
So right now, when we had planned the trial, we looked at all the data. There was still no good data where it looked like that it was okay to, as traditionally we do the tumor biopsy. There was no data that showed us it will be a good to do just the liquid biopsy. So we were not, there is some data, but we were not comfortable and confident that we could replace the liquid biopsies. So at the first 200 patients, we're going to do both. And then at that point, we're going to look at with the FDA whether there was a good concordance between the tissue and the blood. And if there was a good concordance that we're comfortable that liquid is okay to go ahead with, we will stop the tissue biopsies and we'll start only liquid biopsies. But for now, that's why we're doing both. And that's why this trial is so important to us.
Very interesting. Thank you.
I have a question. If you're on, let's say,
Shoot, I suppose this was 6:45 Eastern time. No, there's 7 o'clock Eastern time. I've been waiting for.
I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Go ahead, Dennis. Sorry.
If first, I'm on alectinib. So if I have, let's say I would have progression and my oncologist would automatically, I think they're going to recommend, biopsy and to see if there's different mutations. And let's say he would recommend to switch me to leratinib, the next TKI in the chain. Do you guys work with my oncologist, or would you guys basically, if you partake in the clinical trial, you guys become the primary caretaker?
So it will depend on the situation. Definitely your local oncologist will be able to, you can follow up with them, but I think, initially to get started, if they don't have trial open, you may have to go to the place where the trial is open. But once that is open and once you're enrolled and you are randomized, then definitely rest of the care can be part of it can be done locally, but you'll still need to come and follow up and make all kinds of, all the follow-ups as far as the trial is concerned to place where the trial is open. Jessica, how do you do it in your place? Is that how you guys are doing?
Absolutely. So the first step is figuring out whether the study is open at the site that your oncologist practices in, and also to discuss with your oncologist whether the trial could be a good option for you. And if the answer is yes, they think the trial should be explored, but the trial is not open at the center where your oncologist is, then I'm sure the oncologist would be more than happy to try and connect you with a site close by that does have the trial open, and that's how everything starts. And if you do end up going on the trial, and then the doctor who has the trial open and is caring for you on the trial becomes your quarterback, right? That role switches, but we'll make sure your original oncologist is kept updated and there will be collaboration.
Thank you.
May I ask what the name of this trial is?
What is there?
What is the name of this trial?
It's called ALK Master Protocol, or LU003.
Okay.
And RGLU003.
Okay. I think my oncologist, Dr. Gadgill, he's pretty familiar with a lot of the ALK things that are going on right now. The different trials and tests, and yeah.
Yes, Dr. Shrish Gadgill?
Yes.
He's come on
okay.
as one of the key investigators on this trial, actually.
Yeah.
He was?
Yes, he is going to be one of our investigators.
Great. Yeah, he's a wonderful person. I feel very fortunate.
Yes, yes. He will know all about, he knows all about the trial.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much for coming on a Sunday and joining us for almost 48 minutes, almost close to an hour. Gina, I don't know if you have any remarks for the doctors before they head out.
I just wanted to say thank you guys so much for
Thank you
working
very
on
much.
this.
Thank you.
And you can just send us the list of the locations, and we'll make sure that's posted to the group. And yeah, we'll move from there. Thank you guys so much for taking your time.
Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity, and thanks. And it was good to know that there is a patient on the trial, and thank you again for support. And please give us email us or call us for any questions.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
For those who
Thank
want to
you.
stay on